Patron Judith Day posed an interesting question to me the other day. With how badly the last few seasons of Game of Thrones went, and with how badly the series concluded, do you think that George R. R. Martin's legacy has in any way been tarnished? This is actually a really great question. What a lot of us here in the Song of Ice and Fire fandom tend to forget is the fact that most Game of Thrones viewers never have and never will pick up a single book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. For them, Season 8 of Game of Thrones, for better or for worse, is the ending. And when these people hear the name George R. R. Martin, if they even recognize it, they are going to associate it with Game of Thrones, not his books which they've never read. We are in a bubble. Outside of our bubble, people don't necessarily realize how much of a divergence there is from book to show. More do now than ever have before, but it's still not the majority. And as someone who has a YouTube channel that focuses heavily on A Song of Ice and Fire, I find that people are often very surprised when they realize just how significant the differences are from book to show, especially in the later seasons. The point of what I'm saying is, in general, if someone recognizes the name George R. R. Martin, they don't think, oh yeah, the author of A Song of Ice and Fire. They think, oh yeah, the guy that created Game of Thrones. And if they didn't like the ending, then it follows that they're going to associate that with George R. R. Martin. And then there's also something else that I've observed in regards to people that are already fans of the series. I've seen tons of comments on my own channel of people saying that because of how badly Game of Thrones ended, they now have little to no interest in finishing the books. And it's not just new readers saying this. Some of these people have been reading the books for years. The negative reaction to Game of Thrones Season 8 was also very well publicized on the internet. Even people that never watched Game of Thrones know that it ended awfully. And if those people Google Game of Thrones, what is the first thing that they see? Game of Thrones, based on the book series by George R. R. Martin. They probably aren't going to realize that the books aren't finished and that the last several seasons were rushed along by two pretty arrogant men who had completely lost passion for the project. No, what they are going to see is George R. R. Martin. And if it ever came time for that person to pick up a fantasy book for the first time, because of the reaction they saw to Game of Thrones, they might just pass over the book with George R. R. Martin's name on the cover and grab the one by Sanderson or Hobb or Jordan instead. Not that any of those are bad choices. So, to answer your question, Judith, has George R. R. Martin's legacy been tarnished by Game of Thrones? Yes. To some extent, I think the ending of Game of Thrones has negatively impacted George R. R. Martin's public perception. Now, will that affect the sales for Winds of Winter? Probably not. Just because of how bad Game of Thrones ended, many will likely scramble to see George R. R. Martin's version of events. And I honestly think that most readers that say they've lost interest since the end of Season 8 will regain some excitement once the new book is actually released. But still, people are more critical of George R. R. Martin now than they've ever been. And the term overrated is being thrown around more and more, even though it's completely unwarranted in my opinion. If you're watching this video, then there is a chance that you've seen some of my other videos on A Song of Ice and Fire. There's hours and hours of content psychoanalyzing characters, discussing the various themes and bits of philosophy which fill the series. We understand the genius of George R. R. Martin's series. But most people, like I said, aren't in our bubble. Also, the fact that it's been 8 years since the release of the last book has led many to the conclusion that Martin doesn't know how to end his books or has no intention to. I, of course, disagree vehemently with these people, but that doesn't change the fact that this viewpoint is out there, and as time has gone on, I have seen this sentiment become more and more popular. Now, all of this being said, George R. R. Martin still has, and likely will always have, a loyal and dedicated audience because his books really are that good. Once you've read them and connected with the characters and become immersed in that world, you know that. It's very popular right now to hate on Game of Thrones. It's become an entire genre here on YouTube. It seems that a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon. I was always very critical of the series, even when most people weren't. But that was not only because I saw the potential in what the series could be, but I also recognized and understood how incredible the source material was. It seems that a lot of people are not making the same consideration. Show bad, therefore, books bad. And if you're one of those people, I have to say once again, I strongly disagree, and I highly suggest you give A Song of Ice and Fire a chance, because the differences between book to show are far more significant than most people realize. So, in conclusion, though some people might think less of Martin now, in the long run, I think he will be remembered as one of the greats. Great art stands the test of time, and you simply just can't write off someone that's demonstrated this level of talent. Thank you guys for watching. Become a $1 patron in order to vote on my next A Song of Ice and Fire video topic. Also, my long-awaited Euron Apotheosis Part 2 video will be uploaded in the next couple of days. You can always get updates on what I'm doing by following me on Twitter at ideasofice_fire. So I was reading Rick and Morty Dungeons and Dragons by Patrick Rothfuss, and there's this awesome little panel where there's George R. Martin and some other guys teaching Morty how to play Dungeons and Dragons. So it's like Rick and George are buddies. I thought that was super freaking funny. And yeah, the glasses are still fake.